Yes, we are in the field for the last so many years, so many years, so many years. One thing, right, we have practiced, that is the development of excellent employee relations. That has been our motto, and that's what we have been doing it. Here, when we talk of employee relations, we do not talk of labor laws at all. If we talk of labor laws, then employee relations cannot come. Now, from here, from the point of view of excellency in the business, from the point of welfare of the workers, what we have done for the last almost 20 years is that we have engaged in developing excellent employee relations with everybody, including the trade union leaders locally also. On account of this, we see here a tremendous improvement in the overall industrial relations, and in fact, the industries have been able to implement the latest technologies and the rationalizations, and also improvement in the income and this thing of the workers, welfare of the workers, everything has been happened here. Here, what I would suggest is this. Here, the one thing is that still the bondage is done. In fact, the collaboration movement, we have almost succeeded, I should say about 70%, we have succeeded. Now, we need to succeed further. For this purpose, actually, as rightly said, a joint understanding between the union and the company is absolutely required in the business. That's exactly what is the on the day. That is required. In fact, all of you have said that bipartisan and that must be there. I totally agree with you. The thing is that bipartisan must be encouraged, must be done, then only it can be done, and then we have quite succeeded in this respect. This is one point of view, so that we are not away from this scene of extending and understanding getting the cooperation, understanding the trade union. We are not forgotten the point. We are in it. We are in it. We continue to do it. That's our game. Second thing is, most the eminent, all the people, all the eminent leaders have clearly said that okay, we oppose the labor code, and we will, we have to go on a national strike. We had to go on a one. We had to do this. Now here, my only one point is that can the unions go specifically into which provision of the act is really hurting the workers today from the existing legislations? What is hurting it? In fact, Mr. Vivek made a point regarding one clause regarding a trade union chapter. Okay, that's fine. Like that, the trade unions must pick up specific subject, specific provision which they feel it has deprived on account of this code, and take that dialogue to employers and to government. That will be more fruitful. Otherwise, what happens, on the whole, if you say that we totally oppose everything just for the sake of it, we oppose it. So I don't think anything will happen. So we need to, because you have to do the justice and we have to do the justice for everybody. So that's our mutual interest. From that point of view, why not we move a step ahead in the sense that let us get specific issues or provisions which you think it is going to hurt the workers today. That item you can take it up with higher ups and then discuss and take it forward. This is one thing what I wanted to share with you, so that whether it's possible for the trade unions to do, so that we can have a conference on that. Even with the government also, we can have a conference. The conflicts can be minimized to a great extent. Because if you see the code, as I see in all the codes, there are not many changes at all in the provisions of the code, except some 10% of the provisions have been changed. Otherwise, existing provisions have been retained. There is no change in it. So why unnecessarily get emotionally upset and then try to dissolve? This is my point of view. This is one thing. So with this, I just the throw for future discussions, so that some enlightenment should take place. But my suggestion is that let this platform be a monitor platform to take it forward, in the sense that let us understand the specific problems and attack it exclusively, so that we can minimize the conflicts. So thank you, and then we'll open for the question answers.
Thank you. And this is the first, because one gets invited to these seminars, quite a number of them happening. And sir, the point that you made, that let us use these platforms to build consensus, to come collaborate together. It's a fantastic, brave attempt by the organizers to do that. So congratulations and thank you for that. Having said that, before we go to question answers, 2, 3 things. Some of the things which we feel have got simplified. The wages definition has been simplified. That helps. Now that cuts both sides. Managements are saying that gratuity provisions have to be higher side. ESIC contribution may become less, etc., etc. But since there are 4 eminent trade union leaders, something which is about trade unions. I remember Sanat Mehta committee report, and after that, the trade union recognition probably went into cold storage. Unless I'm wrong, I'm reading about some provision which has been made for recognition of trade unions. We may call it representative, whatever it is. Quick views on that, because all of you have given your overview. So we understood, we appreciate, we may differ, but we appreciate. And so very quick observations on recognition of unions as a part of the code, and then we will move ahead. Thank you.
So, who is to take floor? Can I take floor?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah. I found a comment about that there will be appointment letters now. But my comment is appointment letter includes in itself retrenchment letter. Because fixed term employment means you are joining this day and you are going there on this day. So all note giving, asking, negotiating by the management or by the worker, that process is gone. So it's not simply appointment letter now will be given to everybody. It also means fixed term employment means retrenchment is also announced simultaneously. Second thing which is being told, why we are so much agitated. Strikes will become impossible, and that is never a first step. That is always a last resort. And I would say that there should be no need of strikes, but that kind of environment needs to be generated in the country that there is no need of strike. But we think at present those rights have to continue, and the right to strike itself is being made impossible through these codes. Third thing is working hours. Many states came out and increased working hours, and Gujarat went ahead in a way that made it 8 to 12 hours, and they said they will not pay overtime. Supreme Court had to strike down that act which the amendments were made by Gujarat government. So the working hours is a serious issue. Fourthly, the wage are being cut. Wage cuts is happening in many places, not only the job loss is happening. Brijesh ji was talking about MSMEs. I know the studies from MSMEs. Their organization came that 35% of MSMEs will not be able to start work at all. So they are dead. 30% or 35% of them will be able to start only after 6-7 months, yet not started. And about 30% who have started, they could not come to the profit level as they think they should come back. So in such a situation, this informal economy sector, smaller sector is suffering. So naturally the worker who are already in poor wage conditions and safety conditions, they have suffered more. So the loss of jobs has happened in bigger sector also, medium sector also, and this is a ground reality. Only up to 30 to 35% are regular employees of any factory. Rest of the people are through contractor. So you can understand why this agonizing viewpoint given by all the 4 trade union leaders is because contractualization, casualization, outsourcing is on the rise. And the government's codes making is further pushing these workforce out of the ambit, and those who were covered by law, weakening their situation, and Trade Union Act also being, under pressure. So Trade Union Act is under pressure from the point of view that the punishments are being increased. In the name of outsiders, many people will not be allowed to guide the unions, and then derecognition of unions on whims of officers. This all is dangerous. So collective bargaining, if Vittal Raoji says that we should tell what are our concrete things, really you need 4 hours webinar, we will tell you point by point. And it's not that we did not tell what were our objections. Whatever little chances we got in the parliamentary committee, there we could, labor standing committee, there we could put whatever little discussion happened, there we put. But to contrary to our suggestions, whatever was in the original drafts, even that was further weakened. That draft was further weakened. So it's not that we were not ready with telling where should be full stop, where should be comma, and which word to be there, and all those discussions were there. We are always ready for discussions because we believe in dialogue. Dialogue bipartite, dialogue tripartite, we believe in that. Even though we may be having differing views as far as political connotation of working class politics is concerned, different central trade unions will have their viewpoints, but together as central trade unions, we always believed that we want to have dialogue. We always believed in tripartism. We always wanted Indian labor conferences. We always wanted the recommendations should be implemented, which comes from ILCs. That all was there, we always said. And if you talk of wages, then I should say, I don't know after 7th pay commission, there will be 8th pay commission or not. That is one, government sector. On bipartism, so many bipartite wage settlements are in the air, not concluding. And as regards minimum wages issue, in almost all these states, now the trade unions are being pushed out of those bodies in the name of expert committees. The trade union mention is not even there, who are considered to be important component in discussions on minimum wages in every state looking at the situation of inflation. So wage is a very, very important issue because vast majority, as all the trade union leaders who are here today in this webinar, they agree that it is almost 90% and little more than that who are not protected under the existing labor laws, and they are the people who suffer on these wage issues also. So there are government employment, there is public sector employment, there is big industrial employment, then there is medium, micro and all, and beyond that, contract worker and casual worker. So when we talk, we are talking of all these workers. We are not limiting to one section, and that's why we think the issues are many and plenty. I have already noted down 8 states have seen accidents after reopening of industries. 8 states. Maybe my number is less. This has happened during this period. So what is the question of safety, and why intermingling of those acts which don't have anything to do? So it is making functioning of trade unions difficult, collective bargaining difficult, job security difficult, and even the wage question difficult, safety issue difficult. So if somebody says what is labor codes doing, so Vivek talked of history. Yes, that is true. When I say strike right is being taken away, from where the workers began in India, our first strike in India was in 1827, and the workers did not even know that there could be any union or collectivism. The union started coming into being only after 1860s, and that also was not class-based union. They were community-based or religion-based unions. The class-based understanding, class consciousness unions came only after 1890, and then 1900 onwards, there was a big chunk of trade unionism. So beginning with strikes, and if you note down, even within 1890 to 1900, I'm concluding.
Madam, don't want to cut your flow.
I will conclude it that then Strikes began from 19th century to 20th century. That is the last weapon. It used to be very easy weapon during British period, but in independent India, we ourselves knew that industry has to flourish and peace has to be there. Only when compelled and pushed, it should happen. So I agree that we are being pushed back 100 years, 150 years in some cases, and in some cases 60 years back. So this is varying law to law, and especially international commitments with ILO, international covenants and international labor standards have also not been taken into consideration. That is why such a opposition and agitation you find when the trade union leaders speak. It is happening because of that, because we know our workers will suffer and we will not lie low, we would struggle. But definitely we want industry to come back. After COVID, the things should improve, jobs should be there, peace should be there, industry should flourish, but that will flourish by keeping workers also happy and giving them their due. Thank you. Sorry for taking more time. Sharanji, I am troubling you.
No, no,
Sharanji,
you are not.
Sharanji, may I say something?
Yes, sir. But I also want, I'm eagerly waiting for views on trade union recognition,
Oh,
which should be
yes.
so clear to all of you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it should be by
So,
voting. It should be by voting.
I
Okay.
have BMS has not objected the codes in totality, because as Vittal Raoji has expressed, most of the rules are same. It is copy paste are being in practice since last so many years. So on certain specific issues, BMS has raised objection, especially the threshold limit on certain more issues. It needs time to discuss in detail, especially on the recognition of trade unions. Of course, there must be governance. Trade unions should not be dealt politically. When a political party comes to power, they give betas to others, and when they go, it goes. So there should be strong governance to deal, because trade unions are an important component. They should be a legitimate body. At sub floor level, trade unions are being governed under a trade union act, but at central and federations, they are out of governance. So there must be governance. We do welcome, and we ask government that they must come up with a fair legislation. There should not be any partiality on others. And especially the area where we are confronting, we have taken up with the government, and we are asking the industries and many other stakeholders to come up with the solutions. Entire paradigm has changed. The new paradigm we need to find, because the economic cycle lastly mostly only for 10 years or so. So after the ideas, thought process of 60 will not work in 2020. We need to find a new way, new approach to deal with this such one. So we are trying, we are working, and the issues which really goes against the interest of workers, and there will be, cannot be accepted. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Ramachandran is still there, or he had to leave the webinar? I think he's not there.
He's not there.
He's not there. Vivek, sir.
Can I add a couple of
Yes. No, I'm coming to you because I want specific answers from you, Vivek. I can take the privilege with you because we know each other.
Yeah.
One of the things, and first of all, I'm very happy and genuinely that all of you said that HR has to play a major role. Believe us, sir, sometimes we are called whether you are trade union leaders.
Exactly.
Yeah. So believe us that we try to play that role. We may not be 100% there, but our attempt is honest. In that context, some of the cobwebs which are there, and for instance, the definition of wages, it has become easy. Now there could be a thought that it could have been better. But do you think some of the directional things like this will help us in resulting disputes? You state your views, but I want your specific view on the definition of wages, which is coming out to trying to bring in some clarity. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Shall I speak, Sharadji?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. See, there was one question which I saw in the chat. It says that, well, now the codes have become law. So now we have to live with them and go forward with them. See, my point was just that these codes are actually are not something that have evolved. They are a political imposition by the present government, utilizing the fact that they have a majority, a complete majority in the parliament. But the additional point I want to make is that what is made by law can also be changed by law. So these acts have been enacted and 29 acts have been repealed. In the days to come, 29 acts can be enacted and 4 codes can be repealed, because governments make and unmake laws. So the question is, within the next few years, what is going to happen? Is this going to be implementable, or is it going to lead to a political mobilization in which the labor rights becomes a political issue, an electoral issue, both in the states as well as the center? Now, I would like to remind people that this is not the first time that this kind of a fundamental change in laws was attempted. It was first attempted by the first NDA government between 2001 and 2004 in the form of the Second National Labour Commission. And what happened? The Second National Labour Commission submitted its report. That report was, rejected. But how was it rejected? Not by the government in power. It was rejected by the government being taken out of power. And then it had to, again wait for another 16 years before now we see some of those things which were recommended back in 2004. So my point, which I want to make very seriously, is that this is really a political issue, and let's not underestimate, or let's not, think that this is just going to go the way, without any opposition. Now, coming to the specific issue of the trade union recognition, I had mentioned earlier that there is no application of mind while drafting these, labor codes. Now, a recognized trade union normally is a trade union that has certain rights. And one of the rights is to enter into a settlement in respect of all the employees. But if you also allow individual settlements with individual employees, then what is the meaning of a recognized trade union? And these labor codes do allow individual contracts with individual employees side by side with the so-called recognition. So it is making very self-contradictory recommendations. And that is why I said that there is no application of mind while drafting these, labor codes. I can give you so many other examples. The last point I would like to make is that, see, it's not a question of amending or correcting something here, something there. The basic structure of these codes is flawed. And the basic structure, it is flawed on issues of collective bargaining. It is flawed on issues of the autonomy of trade unions, which it had to this point, against interference by the governments. In fact, now these labor codes open the floodgates, open the doors for gross interference by the government in each and every aspect of trade union functioning. So this is not acceptable, and this is not going to pass.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And, all of you have given your views, and many of the questions which we wanted to ask, you being such veterans, you have covered it up in your individual viewpoints, in your individual discourse that you made, the narrative that you made. We are very thankful to you. Unless we have missed something in terms of, wages, definition of worker, recognition of trade unions, fixed term contract. Now, there is other view that contract labor, whether this fixed term contract, there is a other side also. And since the title is there, I'm taking the liberty that, take a company like ours, we are into project business. Now, we pay certainly more than minimum wages and do many things that are required. But what happens to us after the project is over? Now, these were all question marks. we can disagree that FTC should not be there, but there is another side also. But I will not dwell on it. I'll request Mr. Vittala, unless very quickly to say if we have missed something, because the idea was to hear the other side, which you are given time. After your views, then I will leave it to the organizers for question answers. Somebody is going to regulate that. And so with that, I give it to Mr. Vittala.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Sharat. I think it is just like, of course, one or two points have emerged by trade union specific issues. I think that should be the starting point for resolution of issues at any point of time. At any point of time, because what happens is that, you see, now my feeling is that the trade union should not take it as a political agenda to oppose en masse. That will never yield the result, because last so many couple of years, we have seen a lot of all India bunds taking place, all India strikes taking place. What is the result, you tell us? Nothing is happening. Nothing else. So similarly, this issue should not end up like this. Instead of that, you see, all of us now, we have got specific issues and the problem. If you can make a list of these things, then with that list, one can approach the government through the employers also, so that we can sort out one by one. Mr. Sharat rightly pointed out, let us see the example of definition of wages. If you see a definition of wages, now it has become a little complicated definition of wages. It's very difficult for anybody to understand and practically implement also. So like that, can we go and then approach saying that why don't we simplify it? Like that, there are many, many issues. Small issues will be there, not major one. So from the point of view of overall industrial relations, from the point of view of overall employee relations, which we really struggle for, as Sharat said, many times, our management talks that you are talking like union leader. That's exactly what we hear. But one thing is, we consciously feel that we have to be fair, we have to be justice. That's our prime motto. Even today also, with that approach only, we are having this kind of a seminar. With that only, we are having a dialogue with all the eminent leaders. So why not we take it forward and do that? So let this be a starting point in the sense, at least now, if you can come out with specific points, may not be today, at least about some time, if you can give a specific point, then that will help us to move forward before it is too late, This is my suggestion. So I think Sharat can take it over and then open for questions.
Yes, I think I must take this opportunity. First of all, thank Mr. Deen Dayalan ji for creating this platform where, trade union leaders have their say, because otherwise we were hearing only one side of the story and actually we were getting boring. Today, it has given us a lot of impetus to think. Thanks to all of you. While we may not agree, but we have to say that we appreciate what you say. And we will also think over and see as to what best can be done. But with that, I hand it over to the organizers for the suggestions in the chats which have come, questions which have come, to be directed to specific people, so that, the discussion becomes richer and meatier, apart from the overview that we had so far. So with that, I hand it over.
Thanks, Sharatji. I think Vittal will be doing the curation of questions.
Okay. One question has come, of course, not addressed to particular speaker. One of you can answer. The draft industrial relations rules, the whole chapter trade union, the registration, etc., is missing in the chapter. Are you going to take it up with the central government?
Yes. Two things I want to say. The question which Sharatji has raised about recognition of trade unions, this is an old question every time as far as AITUC is concerned. We used to say that you have a ballot at the base level and decide the recognition. But presently what is being suggested by government, then only asking for very large number of percentage of workers with one union and they will recognize and others won't be there. If there are 3 unions, 4 unions, there was 10% and above. who will have a place of discussion, 20% and above, if they get in the vote, who will have. This question of recognition should be through ballot, but then there should be recognition of some people being in the dialogue, even if not in the signing. All those things need to be discussed. So this question was asked. That is why ITUC feels that it should be through ballot. Second thing which I feel is that yes, that is what is democracy about, to agree to disagree. We may be disagreeing with each other on many issues, but still we will have common points where we can always agree to move forward. And when you talk of development of the country and participation in manufacturing and production and in the service sector, that means all people have to be on board. When we talk of politics, I would say that trade unions are not political parties. We are not to contest elections, but we have a politics of working class politics, which we always call that the working class has to have its rights in the democracy for collective bargaining, to have their unions, associations, federations, and then have a space for dialogue, bipartisan or tripartisan, and then at that level, we always expect government to play a role when there is a conflict in the employer and employees, the government to come into pitch, so that a tripartite understanding could reach and we could move forward. So one should not fear this world politics. The working class politics is something which is away from the political parties' politics. So this has to be understood. So we are not non-political people, but we are not political parties. And with the foundation of First National Center of Trade Unions in 1920, the principle laid was free from political parties, free from governments, free from managements. And till today, we hold that position, and we want to go ahead with the working class politics of getting justice at the workplace.
One more small question on this has come. In the draft made, that code draft earlier last year they made a draft code. There, the criteria for recognition of union, they had mentioned 75% of the workforce, 75%. But in the standing committee, of course, all the trade unions opposed 75%, and then you have come to 51%. Now, don't you think that 51% is just sitting on an edge? Because anybody can jump on this side, that side, and then this may create more problems in recognition of trade union than anything else. Don't you think so? Because the 75% what they recommended was absolutely fine. The standing committee, all the trade unions opposed it, and you made it 51%. Now, you are just standing on an edge. Do you think that it's going to help you further?
I don't think. The earlier position was already there. That should be looked into. That was more conducive. In certain sectors, they evolved their own system also, taking all unions on board, 10% and above. And then having, if one union has this majority votes, okay, recognized. Then if somebody has more than 30% is also recognized, and then somebody with 20% above. So different sectors, different things. You can bring a commonality, but not to put it like this, that only this recognized union will have negotiations, all the rest. You imagine 51% workforce and 49% workforce, and you leave the 49% of workers without any voice. So this needs lots of debates, and we, the trade unions, definitely opposed when 75% came. But then when the discussion comes for the further. But Vittal Raoji, I want to tell, there was no recognitions of trade unions. There was no legalization of trade unions, but we fought and we got our rights even from British Empire. So if on this recognition question, we are not left behind, we will be fighting even then, whatever they come. But it will be better, conducive for industrial peace if these things are resolved amicably.
Okay. The next question from the participants. This is a very, very good question. I request eminent trade union to use their good office and efforts to get the right rules in place. what is going to be your role in bringing appropriate rules at least? This is one of the participants of this question. Maybe any one of the speakers can answer this question. Mr. Rajesh?
Your voice was breaking. We could not hear.
Oh, yeah. The thing is,
We could not hear your question. Your voice
Yes,
was
Vittal
breaking.
Ravji.
oh, no, noted, yeah. The
Vittal
question,
Ravji, can you hear me?
yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So far this draft rule on industrial relation code has come up, and we are discussing, and we will try to that whatever corrections are required, whatever modifications are required, we are going to suggest. We have formed a group of experts within ours, and we are consulting with the experts practicing the rules, and very soon we have decided up to 25th or so we will submit our proposal, and we are pursuing that whatever mistakes or misleading or whatever arrangements have been made which is not going to suit us, suitable to the, that should be corrected. We are working on.
Oh, yeah, that's correct.
Yes, we have also gone through those rules which were proposed by the government, and we have also come to some understanding through even the lawyers who are in the labor practice, as well as various central trade unions. So individually also we are working on it, and collectively also we are working on it. We will be definitely submitting. Even though we are rejecting the labor codes and finding too many difficulties, even then we will be pursuing our efforts that in many of the state governments, these are practiced in a way where it doesn't harm the labor. That process, all the things will be simultaneously going. It doesn't mean that because we have rejected labor codes, all other processes which are happening, we will not be intervening. We will definitely be intervening into all those processes also, keeping with our viewpoints as far as labor codes are concerned. And one thing I do want to reply when Sharadji was saying that if there are projects and your work is over, then how can you keep the workforce? You see, we always said perennial nature of work, you have to have a continuity. But when it is project based or the assignment based and all, this was already going on in India. There you can always hire extra workforce, or when you are opening a project, a workforce, that is a different kind of a thing. There was no problem earlier also. There can't be a problem in future also. I am talking of fixed term employment to be included into the governments, into the public sector and the big sector where there is perennial kind of nature of the work, which is not based on projects or consignments or the orders from abroad. So these two things are different. We were earlier also considerate. It will continue because economy is taking new shapes and new ways of working and production activities are happening. So those things can always be taken note of, whatever changes are coming. But the real issue is dialogue. And I have great hopes that even with all these problems, we can still work with the HR people, and HR and unions can definitely work together to see to it labor codes ko ek side mein rakho, but we can talk and see to it that is industrial peace also and there is justice with the workers also.
Absolutely
so those,
right. Absolutely,
those things can
absolutely
also go on.
Absolutely right. That should be the spirit. That should be the spirit. I totally agree with you. Now, one more question has come from one of the audience. I wonder how new codes has made collective bargaining redundant. How is it this can happen? What do you feel about this? Because every day you are mentioning that it becomes redundant, collective bargaining. But these codes, how does it dislodge the established system of collective bargaining, even in a small sector to a large sector? This is one of the questions. Maybe one of you can answer.
I can answer it very briefly.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I had already answered that question when I pointed out that there is an internal contradiction within this code by talking about recognized unions and also making it possible to have individual settlements with individual workers. These are two contradictory things. Now, if individual settlements are possible with individual workers, what remains of collective bargaining?
But the code doesn't promote individual settlement.
It allows it. It allows it.
No, even earlier also it was allowing. Even earlier also, the ID Act allows it, individual settlements.
Vittal Raoji, earlier also it was there, but it was not part of law. It was happening when there is a stalemate between employers, the management and the workers. And a stage came where the workers also could not carry, or the unions could not carry further the agitation or taking out result, and some via media was being formed. And it happened in some places, that kind of a situation happening, but it was not as per law going it that way. So Vivek is pointing out, when you make it as per law, then you are ignoring the role of the union. Second point which I want to say, unionization itself is being made difficult. The kind of percentages they are adding. You see, beginning from 7, then to 10%, then to 100, and the way they are designing it, then the collective bargaining will be weakened when you will not allow unions. And I feel for Ashwin and his family. Ashwin lost his life, and he was pro-labor. He was not anti-labor, and he lost his life because the things were allowed to go the way the conflict arose over there. The things could have been settled, but the central trade unions were not allowed even to talk to that union. That was made pocket management union. And a good officer lost his life. So that is why I'm saying, by having collective bargaining, by respecting unions, allowing unions, all those who are centrally working for several years, you will be bringing in peace in the industry, as well as creating an environment to get justice for the workers. And it will be good for the industry to function. It will be good for the workers also to go ahead. So that is why the role of government has to be actually seeing to it that tripartism functions. Instead of that, they are taking only one-way route, and it is hurting us. So the other side of the coin is speaking.
Okay. Now, many people are coming out in the sense that they would be contributing. They would be contributing good suggestions in drafting the rules. Many people, I think it's a good move by everybody. But if it consolidates, I think it's a very good move to take it forward. We can take it forward.
What is the question?
No, it was just observation. In the sense that the people said that we will contribute our suggestions. That's what I said. I said it's a very good idea to get the suggestion from every corner.
Yes, yes.
Every corner. It's a good idea. Now, anybody can do from you can talk open house. Unmute yourself and ask a
I would like
question.
to take up an issue. A lot of eminent HR people are there, eminent union leaders are there.
Yeah.
Are we looking at India as a country? Our global skill index is 92. China is 42. Switzerland is number 1. I think we are not working towards global competitiveness in enhancing the skill index. And I don't think neither HR nor unions have contributed to say how India can be competitive and be export oriented than import oriented. Do you see it is beyond courts, it's beyond somewhere the patriotic contributing drive is not there either with HR or with management or with the unions. I may be wrong.
India itself is such a big continent that even to serve domestic market, you need to have lots of activity to go on, because we are a developing economy. So of course, export-oriented industry will also go on in India. Then within the country itself, we are like a continent. There also we have to meet the needs of the domestic market. So there is lots of scope in going ahead. That's why I feel that even whatever are the intentions of the government, and if the objective they are telling about whatever they have tried to make changes in the laws or brought the labor codes, which the intentions which they are telling will not be met by this. Again, it will be industry and the unions, they have to work together. Industry and the labor have to work together, and it has to look for both. And there we find that, of course, when the question of skill comes, that's why this Apprentice Act we find a little problem when they have made changes. It will be using cheap labor intentionally for as many years you want it, and just divide of any labor rights. You have to design the changes, whatever you want to bring in the industry or in the workforce, in a way that it benefits development also, it gives better life to the workers also, and then it gives, of course, India also an edge in having markets within the country and outside country.
Mr. Ravi has got a
Yes.
question. Mr. Ravi, just unmute and then speak, please. Mr. Ravi, Mr. B.S. Ravi. Mr. B.S. Ravi.
If he's not there, we can go
Okay.
to
Mr. A.R. Ramachandra. A.R. Ramachandran. A.R. Ramachandran.
if he's not there, we can go to Mr. Shad Abdullah. He has also
Yeah, Mr. Shad. Okay, if Mr. T.V. Rao is there, can we request him to give his contribution? Mr. T.V. Rao?
I think all of them are saying that they are not being allowed to unmute. So there might be a technical issue. Please allow them to unmute.
Yeah, that's right.
Or they can put the question in the chat box.
Yes, yes.
Mr. Ravi, you can put your question. Mr. Ravi wants to talk, but host has to allow. Similarly, Mr. Ramachandran. Is it possible to unmute?
I'm trying to do that. In the meanwhile, if they can put it in the chat box.
Okay. Mr. V, you can put it in the chat box. Yeah. Mr. Ramachandran has asked a question. My question is whether the idea of consolidating the acts into courts was a good idea. Of course, this goes back to our earlier discussion.
There were many acts which were supposed to be redundant, could have been removed. Trade unions were also in agreement. Several of the acts which were not in use could be repeated. But the acts which were functional acts, it was necessary to make changes within those acts instead of clubbing in a wrong way the acts together and putting in one basket. Earlier they said 44 laws, then ultimately finally they have said 29 laws have been converted into 4 codes. But even there, I think there is no connectivity which act has been amalgamated with another act. And then talking of repealing it, also simultaneously talking that state law will be functional. So it is already made into a khichdi, whatever you call it. This is non-functioning and non-starting, as one of my trade union friend has told. That's why I think it was important that there should have been some proper thought given. Even if it would have taken 1 more year and 1.5 years, there should have been proper discussion and proper drafting of these codes. We are not opposed to codes. 6 codes were suggested by second commission on labor. 6
Yeah.
codes. A government talked only of 4 codes, and those 6 codes also were not to amalgamate all the 44 codes. So
Okay.
there should have been proper discussion, which was not done.
Okay. Mr. Ravi,
Yeah.
you can talk now.
I hope I've been unmuted. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I think we are all making so much fuss on this courts, and I'm happy that the trade union side is coming to say that they trust us as HR and they trust collective bargaining. I think we have to go beyond legislation if industrial harmony has to be maintained. And I see no purpose in discussing the legislation that controls a minuscule proportion of the working population in this country and which has not been implemented. The classic example is Migrant Act. I saw the CAA president designate writing in Business Standard saying, I welcome the government getting data on migrant workers and also giving them an yearly fare to go back to the native place, as if it is a new provision. This was already existing in the Migrant Act and has not been implemented for years. I think I welcome what particularly I think the AICTU leader was saying, collective bargaining and HR really taking it forward is the way. And to worry about what this code says and how it impacts, I think it hardly matters for industrial harmony. That's an observation I wanted to share. Thank you.
Absolutely right, Mr. Ravi. Absolutely right. Mr. Ramchandran, you are able to talk? Not yet.
TV Rao wants to.
Oh yeah, please. Yeah.
He is unmuted. Sir, please
Yeah.
Sir, you have to unmute. TV Rao has to unmute. He has made his comment, but he has to unmute. Sir, you unmute in your system, sir. Unmute பண்ணு.
It is not getting unmuted for him. I think many people are asking for unmuting.
Yeah. Now, TV Rao can ask a question, no?
Yeah, now I'm unmuted.
Oh yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, please
Actually,
come.
I'm not an IR industrial relations specialist, but I'm following this more for learning from my side. And what I noticed is the entire emphasis on control and regulation. Maybe some of them are positive, but as Dean has observed very rightly, I think the skill, upskilling, creating the right kind of an atmosphere to contribute, so that I think it's said that happy people contribute, give their best. I mean, how do you create happiness? I think most of the time our laws are more meant towards creating unhappiness rather than happiness. So I don't know if you can ever create happiness by legislation. This is a question mark I have. So I only wish when when the government came up with a new code, they also paid some attention to how do we improve the lives of people. I mean, they will also argue that all of this is meant for improving lives, but I don't get that particular kind of a feeling. I wish there was more emphasis on upskilling, creating the right kind of a healthy atmosphere, how do you take care of the health of the employees, particularly post-pandemic, the responsibilities organizations have, and also responsibility the workmen themselves, the labor themselves have. Today we say HR has 5 constituents. HR's primary job is to take care of the health of they themselves, the families of all employees, and also the community. I think this is the kind of a premise on which I wish we started the environment, the health, safety, and other kind of things. Safety, I think there may be clauses and so on. So I am not a specialist, but I am just giving this more from the HRD perspective. I wish there is more of a development perspective in this rather than merely a regulatory perspective. Regulation is required. There is absolutely no question. I don't know if it is right or not. You are all the experts who can comment on it. But that's all I have got to say.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rao. Thank you, Mr. Rao. Excellent. Of course, we said already, when you talk about employee relations, we should not talk of laws. If you talk of laws, then you don't get the employee relations. Absolutely. So that we need to. Anyone would like to talk now?
Raghavaiah here.
Yeah.
Can I?
Please, please. Yeah.
Vital Rao, Mr. Deen Dayal, and all the eminent people. So whenever any new provision, I'm not talking as management, I'm not talking as union, but I had opportunity to deal with industrial relations. Whenever any new law is brought, always there is one version, another version, and truth. If these codes are put at the center and all the stakeholders are put around it, how these codes will benefit each of the stakeholders, which includes largely workers also. If that sort of a thing was made out, it would have been, I think, much better. That's my view. And because all of us as HR people, irrespective of the codes, laws, it's our principal responsibility in organizations to manage productivity, production, employee engagement, enduring organizations' growth. So the whole burden on us, irrespective of union, government, etc., the burden is on us. How these codes, which are meant to be for clarity, are going to give rise to perceptions, and how those perceptions will lead to long-term adversarial relationships. That's my concern. In the absence of clarity of these codes, how will they benefit the stakeholders?
Absolutely right, Mr. Raghavaiah. Absolutely right. One has to go specifically and address, then only the issues can be sorted out. Otherwise, it remains as a vague conflict. I agree with you. Yeah. Anyone would like to join?
Yeah, good evening. This is Alok Shapurkar here. I head the HR for HDFC's mutual fund business and also Vice President in HRD at Mumbai.
Oh, good.
And I would like to make a comment and also, of course, invite the response from anybody. See, these acts, I have done myself a couple of webinars on this, but I see biggest employer like BFSI sector, IT sector employees, their pain is not getting addressed in this web of laws, because those are the people who really can't stand up and shout in slogans. So generally when labor code comes, the perception or the mind, the commentary in the mind is the manufacturing. But I think the bigger employment is in tourism sector, service sector, and there are really challenges to the bottom of the pyramid there. So that's what I thought I will make a comment on.
Yeah.
Yes, we did talk of service sector also, because when we are addressing the issues of service sector and manufacturing sector, both the sector, production activities, manufacturing activity, as well as the service sector. And we know that the workers of gig economy, or especially the IT sector workers, there are issues, problems. We wanted them to be collectively raising their voice. It took us some years and then only some unionization happened that they could tell their problems. Earlier they were coming and telling that we don't have any problem. Then they came out and told we are being forcibly being sent on sabbatical leaves. And then the third phase came when many of them in the COVID time have been told to go and sit at home. So we know all these IT sector boys and girls who are now coming to the unions and seeking guidance from us. So service sector cannot be neglected. For we, the trade unions, when we look at it, we look at all these sectors, but many of them have been left out in these codes. We are aware of that also. But then our concern is also all the contract and outsourced workers who are also somewhere attached to the big industry, because there are auxiliaries and subsidiaries which are producing spare parts for the big industries. So for us, the worker is a worker, whichever sector, formal, informal, government, non-government, service or production or manufacturing activity. This are just for clarification I'm saying.
Yeah. Thank you, madam. Thank you, madam. Anybody would like to share?
I would like to add a point at this stage. May I?
Yes, please. You
see, the bulk of employment in our country is in the unorganized sector. And therefore, we have to have regulation, labor regulation, which addresses the problem of the specific needs of different sectors. Now, for example, if you take construction workers are the largest, one of the largest sectors in the unorganized sector. And there was already an act for construction workers. There was legislation which was enacted. There were rules in different states. What was the need to repeal the existing laws for construction workers? What was achieved by that? Okay, some of it has been incorporated, in the labor code. But what we need is similar legislation for other sections also. And what we need is welfare boards for various sectors of the unorganized sector, which are giving a lot of employment. Welfare boards, for example, for power loom workers, welfare boards for domestic workers. This is where the employment is there in our economy. How can we upgrade the sector itself and the service conditions of people working in the sector? That is a problem that is completely missed by these labor codes. And there is no need to repeal legislation that was there for BD workers, that was there for construction workers. That was actually a step back. Because of the legislation for BD workers, today in Sholapur, there is a housing colony for more than 10,000 families, which has come up without any loan from the banks, without any World Bank loan. How has it come up? It has come up under the BD Act. So similar things can also be done for other sectors, and this is what we have to address, in my opinion.
Yeah, I quite agree that unorganized sector issues must be addressed. But what I suggest is that why not the trade unions focus on the upliftment of unorganized workers rather than creating controversies for the organized sector? Because you may get totally sidetracked. Instead of that, if the concern is towards unorganized sector, why don't the trade union leaders concentrate on unorganized sector and work towards that? I think that will be a good move. That's what I feel.
Vittal Raoji, we are accused that we don't care for informal economy. Meetings after meetings, seminars after seminars, this is the allegation which comes on trade unions, that you only talk of formal economy workers, which is not true. We talk for informal economy, we talk for formal economy. Both the economies we talk about, and I think the trade unions worked for formalizing the informal economy. We worked for that. And it is for several decades that we could achieve something, that some workers are now protected under labor legislations, and that's where it is hitting when the codes have come, attacking those whatever protections we have got. But what we are saying is the informal economy workers should also get benefited, so that is does not become formalized worker, but the work conditions and the benefits they gets formalized for them. And that is when Vivek talked about these welfare boards. That is the procedure where you try to formalize their benefits and their rights. So it is no contradiction between working with the formal economy and working with the informal economy.
Oh, that's fine. Thanks for
Well,
clarification.
now I remember Manish.
Uh,
Yeah, I moved to Calcutta, correct.
Mr. Veeraswamy?
After we went to Calcutta, he was still using the same number. Yes.
Anyone on the line? Anyone?
Thank you.
Or I will hand over to Mr. Sharad.
Can I have a word?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so my name is Achyut. I'm slightly younger here, I guess, compared to most of the crowd. And I apologize if my statements are out of line for anyone. I'm an HRBP with a pharma company based in Bangalore. And of course, one part of my work is involving dealing with the labor unions and of course our manufacturing units. So I've been going through the laws because I did my MBA in HR, and of course, there's a big focus on reading the BEAR Acts and to understand what are the possible consequences of these acts. And I've been listening to the discussion by Mrs. Kaur, Mr. Monte, and they point out certain provisions that were quite, they felt detrimental to the rights of the unions. For example, Mr. Montero mentioned the fact that the registrar can cancel the registration of the unions based on just a complaint. But my point is, there are also provisions in the act that says that this can be repealed. See, any act that is enacted in the country has, if it provides for something that is possibly negative without any means of redressing it, that is definitely unfair. But based on my preliminary understanding, at least the objections that have been raised by the esteemed union leaders here, I think those points have been, provisions for redressing those points have been given in the acts. And while I agree, there are a lot of there are things that have not been covered by the act. For example, for the construction workers, there are things, having those societies that could, take from, there are things that have been left out, absolutely, and I agree on that front. But my point is, the opposition that is being shown towards these acts, I'm sorry, maybe in my youthful ignorance, maybe I might have missed something, but I'm still not able to understand how these acts are anti-workers. I would say there's a difference between someone who's evil and someone who's stupid. So I feel the acts are not doing enough, but calling them anti-workers, in my humble opinion, at least, I think is slightly extreme. And I would love to be proven wrong on that because I'm here to learn at the end of the day. Over to you.
Mr. Achyut, yes, what you say is right. Your thinking is absolutely right. I agree with you. Yeah.
Welcome, Achyut. You are a youngster. You have your own way of putting things. It's good youngsters learn also. But sometimes the language belongs to different sectors of the society, different groups of the society. When you will look at it in a different way, you will give your language. The workers use the language. If it hurts any sections of workers, they say anti-worker. So don't take it that way. It is our way of putting the things. If we think it is not benefiting workers, or it is benefiting a few and the large section of workers is left out, so it is anti-worker, because we look at workers as a whole. So don't be offended with that word. But we think that these labor codes have not done justice to
At the same time, we must welcome youngsters like Achyut Gupta taking into manufacturing and getting into factories, because today people are not very keen to go into factories and dirty their hands. So thank you very much for keeping the traditions going. And I presume more and more youngsters go into there, because when we ask students as to speak on organizational development and we tell them to speak on group dynamics, they speak with great passion. But when we ask them, where will you apply in a factory location, they said our interest is not factory location. Yeah. So group dynamics we are interested, but factory location we are not interested. When industrial relations is about interplay between two groups. So
If I-
thank you. Thank you.
If I
Thank
may
you.
tell you about that,
I think we'll.
Yeah.
I think we should now close.
Yeah.
I think Vivek's battery has run out. I thought it's a good beginning we made. Let us continue this dialogue with one or two more sessions and see where we can converge and what we can do differently and partner and collaborate. I must thank all the speakers, especially Sharad and Vittal Rao, for beautifully converging it. Vivek, Chandrasekhar, of course, he had to leave, he had said earlier, Brijesh and Amarjit Kaur, and all the participants, and of course, all the NIPM, NHRD organizations. Just a beginning. We have started seeding a beginning. Let us collaborate, but make India the best. I think our whole objective is to make India globally competitive. Thanks a lot. Appreciate all your presence.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wonderful session.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.